Okay, we can get started. Sorry for the delay. It was a wreck on Mopac and it took me a long time to get here. So, hello everyone. I'm Jonathan, I'm the organizer. Thank you for coming tonight. How many first timers do we have tonight? All right, excellent. So this month was a little crazy. I had some last second shakeups with the speakers, but out of nowhere last night, I got a message from Chander and he volunteered to speak and he's ready to rock in less than 24 hours. So a big round of applause just for So a couple housekeeping things. We always meet first Thursdays, usually at the Capitol Factory. Next month, we actually already have planned and we have a speaker, so it'll be at Volusion's offices, and they'll be hosting and providing the food and drinks. You'll get a message about that probably much sooner than you got the message about this one. Tonight, the sponsor is Beacon Hill Technology Staffing, and Cody Cox is here with them. They actually brought some prizes, so we may try and hand out some stuff afterwards to you guys. And they came in, also volunteered to sponsor and help us out with the pizza and drinks. So big round of applause to them as well. So tonight, Chander, I asked him, he said he has a talk and a session that he gives that is like a training that can go for 2 hours. He's going to cut it in half tonight and give time for questions, for people at the end and talk about JavaScript from beginner to advanced. And from what I understand, a lot of interactive code. So break out your laptops if you want to follow along. If anybody has any issues with like sizes of fonts and stuff, just speak up. We've had some problems with that in the future, so try and pump up the font size. And yeah, we have a screen back here, for the people sitting in the back. But Wi-Fi passwords are on the board, and I think that's it. Chander, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So, everyone doing good? Awesome. Is this supposed to be in English? There's no yes or no, so I could go in any language I want, right? Is it supposed to be English or JavaScript? One of the two. So here's the thing, right? I mean, anytime you present, especially when, I think it was 10:30 in the morning when Jonathan goes like, hey, can you actually present? I'm like, okay, let's do it. So you don't get a lot of time to prepare, right? And there's no excuse about it. However, right now you all look very happy. So how about we take a picture when you're happy, because after the presentation, we know you're happy. So what we're gonna do is, all of you are gonna raise 2 hands each. You have 2, right? So 2 arms like that. We're gonna do a picture. How about that? Let's do it. Cool. Now I can tell I have double of attendees as you are. You're really excited. So a lot of you are going, this guy doesn't have any accent or whatever, and he speaks like us pretty much, looks a little different, however, But let me tell you this, my English is not the same as yours. English is my second language, and it can be very confusing at times. So I'll tell you an example from my life. So I was in India, and I had some American friends with me visiting, my beautiful hometown, which is in the Himalayas. It's like, Colorado, you think the mountains are tall? I mean, they're huge, just like half the size of the Himalayan mountains. So when we come to Colorado, we say, oh, I love these hills. So we went over there, and one of my cousins comes to me and says, hey, brother, I'm so excited. First of all, she said brother. Because the difference, you're going to call cousins, we don't call cousins, we say brother. I'm so excited, I'm having an affair. And I'm like, wow, congratulations, and I'm hugging her. You get the idea? American friends right here are like, wow, can't believe this guy. I've known him for so long. I'm visiting his house, and you know what? This guy is such a, really? And I looked at their face, I'm like, what happened? Like, no, don't worry, it's okay. Americans are nice people. They don't want to tell you on their face what's wrong, what's not wrong, right? So the next thing that happens is they're drinking at night, and they're like, really, man, this guy really said that? And I happen to have understood the conversation. So I understood for the first time the word affair is a bad word here. In India, an affair means a legitimate, dating. It's like you're really dating one guy, and you're going to marry that person, and everything is great, And the word that's bad over there is extramarital affair. So what you call affair is actually extramarital affair. So it's pretty interesting, So I might use some words in my English, which might mean something totally different to you. So do not be like my American friends who didn't tell me, hey, you're actually offending our feelings. You'll let me know, because that's important, right? So if I say something that offends you, let me know, because the heart's pure, and everything that's coming out of my mouth is going to be with good intentions. However, I need your support to get there. Because I'm actually going to trash JavaScript quite a bit today. Anyways, so let's just call it, what is it? Austin JavaScript, whatever. We're gonna start the code. By the way, I changed my mind. We're just gonna go with presentation. So this is the most important slide of the day. There are two things on it. It's my Twitter handle and also my email. So if you like the presentation, tweet about it. And if you don't like it, email me. How about that? We're friends, right? There's a little bit blurb about me. There's some awards and other things, and I speak all over the world, get a lot of cool things, see a lot of good, beautiful places and all that stuff. And they all bear me for the most part, but to be honest, this was something I really worked hard to get, but I tell you, take all this away and make me a college dropout, please. That's what I've been wanting to do. I could trade all of this to become a college dropout. Because that's the only thing stopping us from becoming billionaires. Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Sergey Brin. Name a person who's a billionaire, man, he's a college dropout, right? So this is not good. Do not do this. It's not gonna make you happy. Just saying that. I've got a podcast going on. I haven't had a new podcast in a year, but we're gonna get the guy who wrote Angular 2.0 tomorrow. So this podcast is gonna launch less than a week. So do go ahead and watch this because he's going to tell you why Angular is not doing very well and why the future is not very good and why there are better alternatives that you probably don't know about. How many of you know about Aurelia? Cool. So this is going to be good, right? You should definitely watch that podcast. Sign up for a free drop. How many of you use WebStorm? Cool. Do you want a free license? Do you like ReSharper? Anyone uses PyCharm? Anyone uses JetBrains tools here? Okay, so if you want a free license, just put in your email there. We do a draw once a month. You put your email once, but you can qualify. You got 12 chances in a year to get one of those licenses. Cool. All right, let's get back to code. So let me know if you think the font's not very good. Good enough?
No, much bigger. Like 5 times bigger.
You mean like the Colorado mountains? Anyone from Colorado? I hope I didn't hurt someone's feelings. Anyone from Microsoft? We're talking open source here. They're very open sourcey nowadays. How about this? This works better?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Oh, there's a lag. Yeah. Windows wants you to take a break. And so does Microsoft. So they write code in a way that makes sure that you never get carpal tunnel. Everything is slow. You should never, they take care of your health. They're good people. All right, so we're gonna do something very simple. I've got two things here. I've got var x equals to 0, and then x equals to 0. What's the difference?
X equals 0.
They're both in the global scope, by the way.
Huh?
They're both in the global scope.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that's being declared as a global variable that we replace later on, whereas the var one is like a permanent one.
Very good. So if we've got something like this, and we go, okay, let's just do this. Read x. We're gonna go, beginners to advanced. So if you think like, oh, this is going way too basic, don't worry about it. We got something for you too. Cool, if it runs, let's see. Usually demos fail, so don't expect much. We got the console here. So what we're supposed to do? We're supposed to delete, that's it. Okay. So it said 0, right? It didn't actually delete it. So let's do another one. Y equals to 0. Y. X is not defined.
Console is still X.
Console Y.
What was that?
It says console.log.x.
Yeah, I was cheating, so you figured that out. Smart. You guys are smart. That was on purpose to make sure you're paying attention. So even Y is not defined. How about that? So you get the idea? That even though you think they're same, one of them actually could not be even deleted, even though you try to manually delete it. So it's a big difference. So a lot of times I ask this question in my interview because I want to know if the guy has done anything in JavaScript performance. And if he says, I'm a big hotshot guy, you should know the difference, right? And even though it's a small thing that we might actually not even worry about for the most part, but if you're saying you're a JavaScript consultant or whatever, you got to know the difference. So now let's do something really weird. We got var x equals to 10. We got a function here. Maybe just assign it to something else. Work equals the function. So at this point in time, I'm just going to go and put a console.log here. What do you think is going to be the value? Wow, that. It's not going to work. Now it will. What do you think? By the way, how many of you are .NET developers? Wow, the future of .NET. What about Java? No, really? What about Node.js? Okay, so how many of you are not Java developers? What do you guys are? How many of you are fence sitters? Who'll never raise the hand?
Is it undefined because it gets hoisted?
See, a lot of my questions are trick questions, but not all of them are, right? So, what's the answer? Why is it not logging anything? Because I never called the function. Look, guys, you gotta be very attentive in this whole thing. Otherwise, you're not gonna think that JavaScript's buggy and Chrome's buggy and all sorts of things. See, you gotta keep in mind, I actually don't drink coffee, but the days I drink, I talk a lot. So, something is wrong. What's wrong? Number's not a function. What happened there? Oh, I'm sorry. You gotta give me credit. This resolution with 1024 and 768 on a 15-inch Mac. 10, cool. You have no idea what my life is. Life of a presenter. Really bad. So we know that this worked, right? Which is really good. So if you know the answer, don't answer, because I don't want people to have the fun. But just raise your hand so that people know he's a smart guy sitting here. And they can contact you later, you know what I mean? So what we're gonna do here is we're gonna say var x equals to 20, which is pretty amazing. In JavaScript you could do whatever you like. But it's just one of those free countries, like not America, I'm talking about India. You can pee on the road and no one's gonna say anything. And here you get a ticket. So that's what JavaScript is. Any Indian people? I don't want to offend you. I mean, I get a pass, I was born there. Someone did raise a hand over there. Now, you're not Indian, I'm sorry. I'm talking about India and India, as in the country. All right, so what do you think the answer is going to be? So you got two console.log statements. What's going to happen?
10 and 20.
What is it? It's going to be 10 and 20? Who knows the answer? You know the answer? Or I'm going to let you answer it. Yeah.
Yeah, 10 and 20.
Okay, that's not the right answer.
It's 10 twice.
John.
Undefined and 20.
Undefined and 20. Okay, let's see if he says right. Well, that's going to be cheating because you run the user group, man. So we already planted that, beforehand. We're like $20 for that answer. How about that? So, anyways, so we get the idea. Why is this way? Because JavaScript, anytime you define anything in JavaScript, it takes you to the top of the scope. So for example, your scope is that function. It's going to take you at the top of it, and it's going to go create a line right here. So the interpreter is doing this. So that's what it is. I mean, it's happening behind the scenes. So anytime you use a var, you've got a problem, okay? So how about this? I'm going to change this to this. Because this is also legitimate. They're just like, you got to really work hard to create code that actually breaks in JavaScript. You can really write anything. It's so intuitive. Let's say it's so intuitive, which is interesting. What do you think the answer is going to be now?
10 and 20.
10 and 20? Why do you say that?
Because you're redefining x, the global x in the function.
Exactly, very good. So now x is a global function because I didn't put a var against it. Keep in mind, when var x equals to 0 and x equals to 0 are on the global scope, they're pretty much the same thing. However, when you are inside a function, the moment you use var, it scopes to the function. And the moment you don't use var, it's actually going to be a global function, which is pretty amazing. So let's do something else. Are we going to get away from x and y's and everything? Probably not. This is off of the session, by the way. So let's just remove, let's just keep it there. We come in here, we say y equals to 1. right? All right, so what's the answer? Yeah, I'll tell you one thing about speakers. Whenever they ask a question, they want to drink water or something. They're really not interested to know the answer. But I'm genuinely interested to know the answer, so how about that?
It's going to print out 1, then 10.
That's definitely not right. I thought you were a smart guy earlier. Now I think you're very smart, but I tell you, it's evening. It's what, 7:37 in the evening? I don't expect you to even thinking anything right now.
10 undefined 1-1.
10 undefined.
Huh?
10 undefined 1-1.
10 undefined 1-1. All right, why is that? Yeah, it won't really give you anything because y is undefined and it's not going to do anything after that, right? So let's just go fix that. We know this because this guy, line number 18 is going to execute before anything else because work hasn't executed, so these two won't execute. So I think you were right, except the order, right? So I knew you knew the answer, but I didn't want to break the fun here. Everyone's having so much fun. I can't believe a lot of you are like right now rethinking the whole strategy. Should I even get into JavaScript kind of deal, you know? So when I got into, so I wrote my first project when I was 14 years old, you know, and when you're like 14 years old and you make $1 million bucks, you know, I'm not talking about $1 million, I'm talking $1 million rupees in India. It's not a lot of money. I mean, it's a lot of money there, but you know, not a lot of money here. So then you start rethinking, oh, I'm gonna do something really cool, right? So by the time I was 21, I was like, let's just do JavaScript. And I'll tell you this. When I did JavaScript for the first 3 days, I had the biggest identity crisis I've had in my life. I stopped believing there's something like logic in computer science. So if you're feeling that way, we're friends, we're good, you know? I also do spiritual counseling on the side and it's free. So what do you think now we're gonna do? What's the answer now? I'm gonna remove the y.
Excuse me.
I don't excuse anyone. I'm a bad person.
I'm really enjoying all your comments, but what's your Twitter handle?
Oh, you're liking it?
I can't find it.
Well, no, if you're liking the talk, I'll give it to you. If you're not,
I am liking it all.
here you go. We're friends. If anyone wants to put a bad message on Twitter, I'm gonna buy beer at the end of the talk. How about that? Don't do it, please.
CSDHAL.
Yeah.
So that's how you're planning to keep us around for the full talk.
That's the only reason. Like, one thing is for sure, there's nothing great going on in your life if you're here. So.
Oh, that's craft.
No, that was mocking.
That's craft beer.
That was a joke mocking on myself. You know, it was a self-defeating joke. It was nothing about you. So you keep that in mind, guys. So where are we? The talk's over. We're good. So oh, someone's leaving. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't offend you here. It's not that complicated. We're gonna get to normal things. Cool. So the next thing is, you know, a lot of this thing that you do over there, you know, I started liking when I do Node, you can do a lot of these things here. You know, why spend time to go again, you know, refresh the browser and get the same old thing? So if we're gonna check that it's actually doing JavaScript, the answer is true. That means it's not doing JavaScript. So JavaScript is usually supposed to be unpredictable. Let's make sure that it is JavaScript, because this looks like C# or Java, you know? All right, what do you think the answer is going to be?
False.
False? And why is it true?
It's going to be 1.
I can tell a lot of you haven't done Boolean logic in school. I'm seeing a lot of billionaires sitting here.
So if it's true, you'll get a 1.
You get a 1? All right, so it's true.
Yes.
It's not equal. 0.1 plus 0.2 is not equal to 0.3. And it took me JavaScript to learn this lesson. My math teacher could never teach me that lesson. You know why? Because it's smart. I don't know how it does that, but it's got a 0.000004 over there. So anytime you do mathematics in JavaScript, be careful. Okay? So how about this? You know what this is?
Not a number.
Not a number. Very good. So we got a type of not a number. What should it be?
Number.
Exactly. How intuitive, right? Let's just do not a number is equals to not a number. False. Why is that? A lot of you are going to say that it's not checking the type, right? So, well, we'll check the type. We're going to put another third one. What do you think it is? Huh? It's again false. So how do you check this? What are you going to do to check not a number? Type of not a number is a number. And this is also false. So what are you going to do to check it? Yeah, exactly. Someone had the right answer. Very good. Smart folks here. So that's how you check it, right? So keep in mind, a lot of these things, they can get really tricky. All right. So what do you think about this? Oops, sorry. That's good, right? Not a problem. What do you think about that? Not a number. Very, very good. That's not the answer, though. That was good. 18? Wow, that is right. I don't know how you got that. I tell you, it's amazing. So, you get the idea? It's pretty smart. Now it's inferring the type based on, oh yeah, looks like the guy wanted to do a multiply. So let's just change the type over, right? And then add it. So it's pretty impressive. But the first thing, what was it doing? It's inferring the types. It's like, let's make something work, right? So whatever it does is trying to help you out. JavaScript's a language that's trying to help you out. It has no other intention whatsoever. And the results could be pretty crappy, which is okay. So what do you want to do next? Well, the next thing is you got a function, right? And you can actually have a function which can have another function in it, or you can pass a function in another function. We do that all the time, right? Is everyone clear with functions in JavaScript? Okay, that's cool. So let's do certain things. How about I want to use something in a function that I don't want to expose outside the function? How do I do that? Okay. So what's the code for that?
Add the extra parentheses at the end. Or put the whole thing in parentheses.
Like this?
Extra parentheses.
Like that?
Something.
Like that?
I'd have to.
Probably not.
Around the function, yeah. What's that? Those parentheses up. Things like that.
Let's just do something very simple. Does everyone know how to create a function in a normal way, like an easy way? Like someone like coming from Java is going to do something like this, you know? Do you do this? You know, you can actually do this. And you can actually, the reason I pass in a null is because I'm not deriving from any other object, so I could do that, right? And then you go x dot, you know, create define property.
Can you make the font size bigger?
Sure. How do I do that?
I know it's videos.
Let's see, settings. Color and fonts, font. It's like what, 20?
Yeah.
That worked? There's a chair in the front too. So we got x dot define property. And then what you do is you put the object, which is x in this case, name of the property, let's say first name. And then I could actually create my own literal here, which has few things. You know, it has a value. And I'm going to try it. I hope this is true. Let's try this. Because this is a verbose way of doing it. A lot of people don't do it. But I just wanted you to see what that is, what it looks like. And then I don't know if it's writable. Writable's true. And then it's configurable, or it's something else. Enumerable. Does anyone remember the third one? It actually doesn't matter. But this is how you define a property. And it has now a value which is that. Let's just see if it works. You know what that happened? What happened there? Let's see if X is working. I'm so sorry. Cool, this should work. So you see that we have first name as Chander, we're good to go. Let's just do this to make sure that it actually did work. So we've got that, right? So how many of you define properties like this? No, right? But this is how actually JavaScript's defining the property behind the scenes. And this, there is a benefit doing it this way. What's the benefit doing it the other way around? The way you do it.
Expediency?
Huh?
Expediency? Okay.
But if you create this method one time saying, hey, I'm going to define property, and it's just one method, you keep calling it, it's okay. What's the benefit doing it this way? Control, yeah, very good. Who said that? That's awesome. And also, there are things like, you know that every function has a toString? You guys do that? You override toString and all that? It's better to do it in this format, but that's okay. What you can also do is change this to config. Like, one time you can config, and I think there's a third property, I forgot what it is. It's writable, it's enumerable, and they're all by default true. So if you want to change that, you can actually change it. This is another thing you won't get if you go define the way you define a property. But again, both of them are okay syntax, so we can do it. So what's an object literal? Does anyone know what an object literal is? I'm sure you know it. Okay, well, let's just type it and you go, oh yeah, I know this guy. So have you seen something like this? Would you define a property like this too? What are you doing here though? We're instantiating the object pretty much. So that's like object literal is more like, yeah, here's an instance of that object. It's not about like, yeah, I'm creating an object and then I'm instantiating it. You already gave the property, the value and all that stuff, and you can use it. Now, can I return an object literal from a function? Can you do that? All right, so let's try that. So if I go and say var do work, equals to function, and my function does certain things, can I return a function here? Can I return an object literal here? All right, let's try it. We're just going to copy this. Make it look a little bit prettier. You think it's going to work? By the way, do you like WebStorm so far? Did you put your email there? What happened?
You need another curly bracket.
Where?
Oh, never mind.
Let's see if it works. If it doesn't, we'll come back. It did work, right?
No, I didn't see it on the second one.
So it worked. So what did I do here? I got a function that actually returns an object literal. So I've got two properties that I'm actually returning, right? So this was the exact question I asked a little earlier, was like, how do I return something back from a function? However, how do I make something private in a function that I don't want to return? So for example, I don't want to return first name and last name. But anytime someone wants me to return something, I only return the name. How do I do that? I know you've been working for about 12 hours now.
Do you return a function?
I could return a function too, yeah, very good. That's one way. That's a very legitimate way. What else? First name plus last name? Okay, that's one really good way. And all right, so let's just move it up and say var first name What do you think? Is this gonna work? No, it won't. Is this gonna work? Whoa, what happened there? Yeah. You see that? So now what did I do? Now let's say you were gonna go to your function and say how many times the function gets executed, give me a count. You don't want anyone else from outside to be able to change the count, and you want to keep that count inside. That's another way you can have a private variable that no one else touches from outside. What's the downside of this method? Huh?
Saves in memory.
You mean the properties?
Is that a closure? You have to, like, the garbage collector doesn't take care of it, so you have to do that.
Depends on the scope. I mean, it's valid. One of the things is he's got a closure, so the garbage collector won't take care of it and all that stuff. What else? Well, these two values are hard-coded. I was trying to go simple. So we can go in and change this, right? And I could do this, so we're good. Is there something else you could do besides using the var to do the same exact thing what I just did? This, yeah, very good. Now, with this, what's the disadvantage? Let's do the this thing, and we'll talk about it. There are definitely advantages to the this approach, and then there are disadvantages to it. But let's just do that. Right, and we can have the thing come from there now. So we can have this stuff first name, whatever first name, you know, this stuff second name, whatever second name, whatever. Right? We can use return, and everything is good. This will actually make it public, but at the same time, still a class. You're still getting it. You know, you can use it as a class. So let me make that distinction real quick here. We got that? So we're good here, right? How do we call this? Anytime you use the word this, the function becomes a class. That's it. Everything in JavaScript is a function until you see ECMAScript 6, because in ECMAScript 6, you'll actually have a class. Which is a fine, like, yeah, let's just give classes to everyone. Now that they've understood how to use functions the right way, and they've already you know, figured it out, let's just give them classes. That's what they're doing. So now, what I could do is var, you know, my instance, whatever that is, equals to new do work. Now I could call the same function without new, by the way. But the only reason I'm doing new is because I'm actually instantiating my class. So now I'm treating my function as a class. Got it? So when I do this, ins.firstname, you know, obviously this is public and I can get it. And I can use this very much like a class. So anything that you have with the word this becomes public. And anything where I did not have the word this would have actually become private. And that's important. Because I could go ahead and say var, you know, let's just change this to name and change this to completely something else, you know. It's good enough. But then I have a var, first name. You think I'll be able to call var outside?
No.
I mean x outside? Oh, first name outside now? Let's just do this. It's unbelievable. That was not an error because actually I didn't do anything. I didn't do console.log. Otherwise it will be. It's undefined. Why is that? Because that property is not accessible outside the method. Is everyone good with this particular one? Right? So now, can anyone give me an example where I need to pass in a function to a function? Function to a function? Like, why can't a function do anything that a function is supposed to do? Like, why do I need to pass in a function?
You have asynchronous. Then you need to have something call back that when you're done with some asynchronous.
Very good. Someone has the back also raise his hand. Did someone have an answer there?
Same thing.
Same answer? Well, what if it's not a callback? That's just one example, right? What else? What else could be there that I really need to pass in a function to a function? I can't just have the function do it. Anyone?
Passing some custom behavior, like an animation.
Custom behavior. I want it to execute in a different way when I'm running that function, and that's important too. And I'm looking to my notes to show you some other cool stuff that I might have missed upon. All right, so let's do that. So function into a function. It's very simple. Var x equals to function. This technique is very, very, very cool. I mean, in fact, JavaScript was one of the first languages that even allowed it, and a lot of other, people actually stole it. So now when I call x, I can pass in a function here. So, by the way, you know that you can pass anything to a JavaScript function. If the function has like 1 parameter or even 10, doesn't matter. You can pass whatever you want to pass. It's going to work. If it has 2 parameters and you pass 5, it's totally fine with it. It doesn't care. Hello? It's very forgiving. So right, that worked. You saw that? We did get the value there. We were able to make it work, which is awesome. So now, let me show you. All right. So here's another test. Keep in mind, I'm actually declaring it with a var. I'm not declaring it without a var. What is he going to print? What is he going to print?
It'll be undefined.
Undefined. Who said that? Very good. You're actually very smart. That's exactly what I thought that it's going to print. However, it's not going to print that. Because technically, in any other language, it'll actually print that, right? Because it makes total sense. Because now you're out of that scope that you actually declared in it, right? There is no other language which will actually let it go. But JavaScript. It's amazing. Watch this. It's going to print a 10. Why is that? It's kind of weird, but that's what it is. Huh? No. Well, his logic is really right. If you use the var, technically you shouldn't be able to do this, right? Because you use the var. So it should be part of that scope. However, remember how JavaScript gets initialized? It goes to the top of the scope it is in. So what happens is the moment you do this, it creates a line right here. Var I equals to undefined. Because for loop hasn't even executed yet. It's pretty crazy, but it's important because you might get answers which are really pretty crazy. Let's just do an example.
So were the guys who designed this high when they did this? There's no.
No. It's not that they were high then. They're still high. 15, 20 years later. So let's just do a real thing, right? We've been talking a lot of JavaScript without any HTML. You're like, looks like the guy doesn't know any HTML. That's true.
There has to be some utility to hoisting.
Huh?
What's the utility to hoisting? Why have that?
For hoisting?
Yeah.
You know what? They stole it from C. But they were like, I know C. I don't like where I declare things. I know where to declare things, because it's always on the top. But I'm a smart guy. I can declare whatever. It should be something that the compiler, in this case interpreter, should figure it out. That's how they designed it. Pretty amazing, how decisions are made. I met the guy the other day who was part of this decision making where like Austin should be 3-lane or 4-lane. And the guys at that point of time thought that if we make it 4-lane, a lot of people are going to move in, so let's forget it. And this is true. This guy was telling with a lot of pride that I saved $1.5 million to the government. So how many of you were like in a 1-hour traffic before you got here? I mean, Jonathan and I were, so we know this. So I'm not going to tell you his name. I actually know where he lives. So something
And for a
like
small
this.
contribution.
So when you write code, there's a really good quote I like. You know, when you write code, write it in a way that you understand this, that whosoever is going to maintain your code is a psychopath and knows where you live. Right? So always write good code, guys. I mean, because in the world of source control and LinkedIn, all it takes is a search to know where you are. All right, so what we're going to do here is basically try to get something var, let's just say x, get document, what is that? How do you do it? Element, right? Document dot get element by ID or tag name in this case, and let's just say input. And I think I'm going to have all my elements here. Elements, what's going to be the length of my elements? Or n equals to elements dot length, I guess. So if I were to do a for 0 n what kind of code should I write out that this guy actually will be clicked? Which particular of these guys getting clicked? Anyone can tell me what's going to work? What's going to happen in this case? Because by now everyone's like, I'm sure this is not going to work. But again, not all my questions are trick questions, right? I mean, sometimes you can even love JavaScript. Huh? Did I do something wrong? Oh, yeah, you're right. You were right. Is that good enough? I can barely see what's going on here. Especially I don't even have my glasses. I can't see half the view here. Okay, and if the lights go off, you're gonna see my teeth and eyes maybe? Anyway, so
You're gonna get n every time?
huh? You're gonna get n every time? Which is n? What is n?
The number of elements.
Oh, you mean like 6 or whatever?
Yeah.
Why do you think so?
Well,
Did you really think of that? Or you're thinking because I have a trick question?
no, well, I'm trying to figure out what the scope of that var I is. What's that? If it's creating a new one.
Oh, number is undefined. Why is it getting undefined?
Oh, that's that. You need that.
What is that?
You don't want the element. You just want I.
I don't want the I.
Line 21, just I, not elements of I.
Oh, yeah. You should actually get the idea by now. If it did not understand elements of I, and it says it's undefined, tells you something. So let's go click here. Element number is 7. Click here, 7. It's 7. You know, it says, because it's JavaScript, the founder of JavaScript, he told me one time, my lucky number is 7. So what do you think? What's the reason, and how do you fix it? Don't worry, I'm not packing. Stay here, please.
You need a copy.
I never take a picture towards the end of the presentation. There's like 2 people sitting here, out of respect. Or out of beer, you know, one of the 2 things. Kidding. What is it?
This console log doesn't fire till after all that happens.
That's very good. Wonderful answer. A console.log doesn't fire until the end of the whole loop. It's actually over. Because it's gonna fire when you're clicking on it. When the on click, right? You're registering the event, you're not firing it. You only fire when I click on it. By the time you click on it, the I in this situation is n, which is 7. Perfect. I know one person said the same thing here, so both of you are very good. Now, there's a tie between both of you. for the free web store. Okay, so if you, whosoever answers more questions towards the end, and whosoever is prettier gets it. So what do you think? How do you fix it?
Can you attach the value to the context?
That tells you why I never got a free software in any presentation I've ever been to. How do we fix this?
You store it in another value.
Return a function with the console.log.
Return a function. The console.log. Okay, very good. So now both of you have competition. Who said that? Very good. Awesome. So we're getting somewhere, right? So let's see. Help me on this, please, because I don't know what I'm doing, but we're getting there somehow. Is that good enough? No, it's not going to work. Why is it not going to work? Because I'm not returning anything here. Handler needs to have the value of I. Is this going to work? What do you guys think? I totally forgot what it was. Perfect. Now, to make it work, I should have been smart enough and done this. So you see, this example explains why passing in a function is important. Because previously when I talked about it, you're like, yeah, give me a real life example, right? It doesn't really make much sense. Now this is a real life example where you're passing in a function, but at the same time returning a function in this case. Why are you returning a function here? Because you want to take that value and be able to use it in part of a closure, because the closure makes sure the value is not modified. Does that make sense? So now you can pass in the value you wanted to pass in, and this is a real life example where you're going nuts, checking over and over again what did you do wrong in your code, but it's such a small difference, it makes a lot of difference in your code. All right, so let's do something else. We know we can define something which is, let's just say, this is going to be a global variable, right? We're going to have a literal, let's just say city. We're going to say Austin. Whatever. What else do you have here? You have a state. A lot of people are a little confused, like, what? Maybe it's a trick question. I should say Texas. So we've got this, right? This works. Well, let's just say call it location. What is it going to print? Austin? How many of you think it's not going to print Austin? Let me talk to the guys who don't want to answer at all, all right? Ones who have never answered in your life. Only those can raise that. No, I'm kidding. What do all of you think? Let's just put all of you here. Okay. How many of you think it's not going to print that? You think it's not going to print that? Why?
Location isn't global. It's going to have no scope to put in the console. You did put a bar in front of it.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
That doesn't matter.
So what is the scope of location?
Well, your answer is right. It actually says 404 not found. This is the genius of JavaScript. Let me make this code work for you, by the way. Someone just understood what happened. There you go. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong one. Still says 404 not found. Wow. Austin. How many of you found out what happened? Well, what I'm amazed about is, oh, no, we actually have this. Let's just get that. So location actually is a global variable, right? And here's how many of you use AngularJS? Okay, good. Do you remember this code? I assume I have Angular here. You remember this code? Everyone goes and writes var app equals to Angular.module. So what happens is you've got 3 teams in the company that actually are supposedly writing code for the same, website or whatever, and they end up putting their code in. What's going to happen? At one point in time, someone's going to be upset, like, oh, which app to take? And it's easily overwrites here, right? So it did not tell me location is a problem, and let me write the code, but location, what is location? Location is a global variable, which is window.location is actually a keyword, right? JavaScript understands, and there's a lot of stuff beyond. So our problem is global variables. Global variables are a big mess in JavaScript, because anytime you have a global variable, right, you have a problem. When we have it inside a function, we can define the scope. But what do you do in case of a global variable? You got a lot of problem, right? How do you fix that problem? Anyone?
Make it a local variable.
That's very good, but how do you do that?
Namespace them all into one global variable.
Well, you still have to call it somewhere, right? Let's just do it. How about we create a case? Var do work equals the function, right? Okay, great. And let's just do something here. Let's just assume we did something. Great, right? All my variables got put inside the function, but I still have one global variable, which is do work. So how do I tackle that? I have to run it, right? You gotta keep in mind, I have to make this thing run. I can't just go function. It's not gonna do anything. So now I still have one global variable. How do I fix that? Anyone? It's what? Anyone?
Make it an anonymous function and call it again.
How do you do that? What's the code?
You take out the do work, you just do the function, and then at the end you put 2 parentheses for the next one.
Very good. That's all you do. That's it. Put all your globals and everything, put inside a function, and come in here and execute that function like this. And you're done. So what's amazing is that you actually have to put this bracket here just because JavaScript won't let you execute a function otherwise. So technically you're doing the same thing, but that's just syntactic sugar that you have to know, that particular thing. Very good. So this is the way you get rid of all your global variables. You can have 5 of those, 10 of those, whatever, doesn't matter, but you have them inside a function scope now that self-executes. That's it. So great. And you can also put this inside a new JavaScript file. Now keep in mind, when you have another JavaScript file, most of the times you're better off doing this approach, because no one's going to know what's in your JavaScript code. And that's a real big mess, right? A lot of people go on and make big applications of JavaScript and all that stuff, and let's just go full frameworks. To be honest, there's no real good framework in the market right now. To be honest, how many of you like AngularJS? 400 memory leaks. The Angular team itself, admitted to it, and they're not going to fix it. They're going to make Angular 2.0 breaking. They're going to not have two-way data binding in Angular 2.0. It's pretty amazing. Look at Ember.js. You like Ember.js? How many of you are Ember.js fans? What's the size of Ember.js?
Not small.
Not small, right? Yeah. Imagine, I'm already overweight. And now if I put, I'm in my application is already overweight. How many of you know that jQuery a few years ago was a joke when it came out? You realize when jQuery came out, what was the size of jQuery minify? About 40 kilobytes. And you know that on your phones, there was no browser that actually had a caching limit of more than 26 kilobytes. So a lot of these people who were like, yeah, we're going to do single page apps with Breeze or something which is 270 kilobytes, that was a joke. Because in practice, it would never work, right? You know the definition of an academician? Academician is a guy who's willing to assume anything but responsibility. Have you ever seen them? Let's assume, let, suppose, and all that stuff. And what's a theorist? A theorist is a guy who's not willing to believe in anything that works really well in practice until he's seen it out in theory. And the problem is that a lot of the people who actually write these frameworks are theorists or academicians. Look at the background. And they do it wrong all the time. So in JavaScript, anytime I have to make my app work, I have to write the framework from scratch. Because there's no framework that's going to solve the problem. With jQuery, I had a 7 kilobyte jQuery that I used to use for my own work, and that's good enough. How many of you like underscore? Well, now people are like literally worried about raising hands. It's okay, I've been in your shoes, you know, I mean, seriously. Even though my foot size is like 4, I've tried your 10 shoes. I've been in your shoes there too. A lot of people are looking at my feet right now. How does it go with 4? But again, I mean, underscore is great. But at the same time, if your application is not using all the 20 functions and you're only using 4 functions, that's a lot of code that you should not actually have in your application. It's at the end of the day, you know, when I go to my client and say, look, guarantee 200 millisecond back to back, because I'm a full stack developer. Means I can guarantee 200 milliseconds on any call whatsoever on the application I build. You'll be surprised. You're gonna have to get rid of a lot of stuff that you're actually using. It's very serious, you know, seriously a lot of stuff that you're actually using. You like Lodash? How many of you like Modernizer? That's the only library I have no problems with. It's bare minimum, right? You really need it for the most part.
Modernizer?
Huh?
What's the name of the library?
Modernizer?
Modernizer?
Doesn't have an E. Everything else is good. Modernizer with like ZR.
It doesn't work with CSP though.
What's CSP?
Content security protection.
Weren't you talking about Aurelia earlier?
There are probably ways around it. Yeah. Anyone on Aurelia? Aurelia is awesome. For the most part, it's not production ready yet. We're still building it. So let's just do an example here. Let's just say there's a function here. Are we over time? Almost?
Yeah, it's 8:18.
Cool. It's time for some people.
It's
Pretty late. So if I have something like this, and I'm going to give you an example where the keyword this could be treated a little differently. For example, let's say this, right? And just give it a value here, and pass in this name here. What do you think this is going to work? I don't want to do a lot of it, but I could potentially say, you know, set timeout or something, make it a real function, and then whatever. You know, in this case, I could say like whatever. But imagine it's a function inside set timeout, which is more like a callback. And I've got this.hello. How many of you think that line number 18 is going to execute right? Does anyone think it's going to execute wrong? Anyone? What's this in that case? Line number 21. 18, sorry. What's this in this case?
It's the anonymous function, right?
Right. Well, what am I trying to do?
You're trying to access the function that's inside.
Exactly. So it's not going to work, right? How do you handle this problem? This is something that's very, very common. And a lot of times we don't really realize that we're making this mistake until we actually see the code not working. So a lot of people would do this. And then pass this guy in. That's it, right? So it's like saying, okay, let's go around it. Now, in the modern browsers, you can also do, you know, whatever the function name is, .bind, .reset.bind. And if you do bind, it takes care of that. So now you can use the keyword this, and you can continue doing that, right? So that's another one. Last thing I want to show, otherwise we can go on for a really long time. Huh?
Isn't ECMAScript 6 going to add a feature for that?
It's the same thing. They're still using the bind thing. I mean, I think there's a good reason why you want to do it this way, just because your scope, you really want that person to understand what the scope is, and it gets feeded. Let me show you an example. I think I have an example that can talk about this in a little bit more detail. Now, I actually have a small example here, but let's just do it. So, how many of you know what prototypes are? Okay, good. So if I have an object, I can add another property to it or a function to it in runtime if I use a prototype. So let's just say I've got a var person, equals, let's just say, name, whatever, or just create a new object without really any properties whatsoever, right? Now, I can actually go and say var man, or just the other way around. What's wrong here?
Line 17.
What's wrong? Oh, thanks.
And it's telling you you can replace it with a literal.
Got it. So you got a person here. And now I can add a property here, whatever I want. In this case, I can give it a default value, whatever, right? And this is pretty doable. I mean, it's like, there's nothing wrong with it. Basically what it's saying is that on runtime, I want to add another property to it, I can use a prototype. And this is better than actually giving it a property on its own. And there's a reason behind it. Because if you use a prototype, you can actually have a default value. But if you don't use a prototype, and one of the objects deletes its value, it's going to be an undefined. But you always wanted to give a default value, and that's where you want to use prototype. Prototype is also more like inheritance. You have person, but you have a man, and you always want to say, okay, well in this case, the gender is always going to be, male. So it's inheritance. Person's inheritance could actually go into man, and we can use that property. So when you're creating a man object, we can always use it that way, right? By the way, you don't have to instantiate the property here. I was just giving an example. You actually created the property, you can instantiate it later. It doesn't matter. So for example, right here, var man equals, object of create, and in this case, I'm going to put person. We're good here. Okay? That's it. So you could do this. This is basically saying that we're doing inheritance, right? We're good to go here. Now let's create something a little complicated. So this is going back to this example that I was talking about, but let's just do it. So at this point of time, what I want to do is, what's my scope? Is my scope, am I global or I am not global, right? So in this case, is it going to be W capital or is this small? That's the thing I get a little bit confused in sometimes. We'll see. Whatever works, we'll find out. Does everyone know what's going on here? Everyone clear with what I'm trying to do? Sorry? Right, I'm trying to find out the scope of this thing. Is this scope basically a window, or is the scope my object, right? So at this point of time, what I can do is All right, let's run this. This is my object. Does everyone agree with this? Everyone agrees with this? That this was actually my object, right?
At the very least, it's not with it.
Huh?
It's at least not. We're gonna
Tertiary
lowercase.
is just saying, is this
Definitely.
window or not, it's not, so.
Definitely right. So bar. What do you think in this case? Who is this undefined?
Because it returns.
It's not returning.
It's the unreturn.
Are
The
you
what?
intending to call who is this or just assign it to the
Let's
function?
see, who is this is a property.
Are you
Oh, wait
intending to call
a
it?
second.
Yeah.
We're good. Again? Am I missing something?
X is the function.
Who is this?
X is the function.
That you execute X. So
Yeah. Just again, my object. We're doing something with this wrong. Oh, wait a second. Let's try that. There's something wrong. It's either got to be window, like W capital. Wait a second. It's killing my demo.
I think it's window without the quotes, right?
Oh, wait a second. You were right.
Lowercase.
Yep, that's gonna work. All right, everyone sees this? This is amazing. You won't believe this. How many of you do unit testing and you have a case to test this? I would be surprised if you give me an answer yes. I mean, either you're lying or you're the smartest developer I've ever met in my life. But this is not us. It's JavaScript, man. It's so crazy. Why would it be this way? Why can't I mean, here's the thing. This is counterintuitive, right? And every single example I'm bringing today is actually counterintuitive to logic. So the 3 days that I was talking about when I was 21 years old, I lost like 17 girlfriends in 3 days. Because I was having an identity crisis because of things like this. So you see this? You got a var object equals to new my object, which is great. And I've got a prototype over there. And then if I run this thing, object who is this, right here, it absolutely gets me the right answer, which is you are an object scope and you should be able to figure it out that it's not actually window. So I'm good, right? However, I take the same exact thing and reference it to X. And now this has changed. You know why? Because it's taking the scope where X was declared. This is phenomenal. I mean, like, once you understand how this works, like, there's literally nothing in JavaScript you can't figure it out. But this is amazing. Like, this is exactly how it's working behind the scenes. And a lot of the answers that I'm telling you I've gotten are from Douglas Crockford, who's really literally the father of JavaScript. Really good friend with me, you know. And you'll be amazed, like, how they made those decisions behind the scenes that this thing even runs. I mean, JavaScript is nothing but a bug in production. I'm kidding, man. But it's making a lot of good dollars right now, so love it. Don't forget it. But if you understand it, that's great. Now, questions? How many of you are more confused after this session about JavaScript than you were before the session?
How many are willing to admit that?
What was that first thing that very first thing you did with the delete?
Oh yeah, delete. Very good. So with delete, if you actually have var x equals to 0, you're not going to be able to delete it. Even if you delete x and do go console.log, it'll give you the value. Well, let's make it a better value, like 10. Remove all this because it has x's. So it's got 10, even if I delete it. But if I move this to y, it doesn't matter. I could have x also. But I'm just saying if I remove the var, it deletes the object from memory, and now y is undefined.
Because it's a property.
Well, because it doesn't have a var. But if you have a var, it doesn't let you delete it. Any other questions?
So why would you want to use a var?
That's a very good question. A lot of people who blog about it will say use a var. Well, you want to use a var only if you want to make sure that no one deletes your object. But you know, no one stops you from overriding your object. Have you seen code like this? Let's just show you something really cool. We know this, right? That this is x is undefined. If I go console.log, it's going to tell me x is undefined, or for some reason it becomes undefined, we're good to go, right? Let's just do something else. You know, it's legal syntax. Did you know that you could do that? It's pretty amazing. You could do that, and it's going to work. You want to see this? It's undefined. Can you believe that? All right. Let me make you trust me a little bit more now. What do you think? You think it's going to work? That's not going to work. But this part is actually doable. I mean, you can literally do whatever you want to do. Like I said, you know, you could do whatever you want to do.
So
doesn't really give you a problem.
Does the memory get cleaned up when you close that browser window, or that JavaScript man, or does the browser hold on to it until?
Well, the moment you get to another page, you're good to go. The moment you have a server refresh, you're good. But again, keep in mind, we're moving towards single-page apps. So now you're stuck with a huge payload of memory. JavaScript's pretty impressive. I mean, like, you know, start working with it, you're gonna start liking it. So var, let me go back to it. I want to answer that question before I come back to you. So var should be always used, but inside a method or a function scope, whatever it is, right? Always use it. It's a very good practice. Outside it, do not use a var. Because for the most part, if you're that worried about someone deleting your object, he can also override it. So you're doing something wrong anyways. You should probably put it in function scope. Now, a lot of the blogs you read are from people who don't do coding. They are actually evangelists. In fact, just in your own head, think of the top 3 bloggers you follow. They're evangelists. I can guarantee you. Go back home, check online. They're going to be evangelists. They don't write code for a living. How many of you follow Paul Irish? Isn't that a person everyone follows? Like, look at the keynotes he does, man. He tells you that he's not really even taking the information that he has from, he's just taking most of the information from someone like Ilya Grigorik or someone like that. He'll say that specifically. He's an evangelist. He's not someone like us who writes code on a daily basis. He will never give you the answer that someone like someone like us could give you a lot better answer. Who else do you think is good? Anyone who is famous in the industry, unfortunately, is an evangelist. Raymond, how many of you follow Raymond Camden for Cordova? I'm sure a lot of you have read his blogs and followed his blogs. The problem is he's an evangelist too. He doesn't really write real code on daily basis. He doesn't have a server that actually even runs a website that even has 10 million hits a day. You know, look at people like us writing 10. We wrote a website here that's in your town that had 1 billion hits a day on the day of Thanksgiving. And for the first time in 15 years, it ran fine because we worked on it. But ask them that question: have you actually run a website that even has 10 million users on it? They don't. And what they're writing is something that, you know, they won't be able to talk about because they've never seen this thing in real life. They haven't seen these challenges in real life. They read what you guys read, and then they talk about it. So, your question?
Oh, how do you feel about people who believe that you shouldn't put semicolons in because ECMA script auto-inserts them?
All right, very good. So let me show you a very good example that you brought it up. So what we're going to do is write a function here pretty quickly. And we're not going to do exactly what you just said, right? we've got this, and we're going to say return. What do you write here? Let's just say a literal, right? We're going to return something called name. Help me with this if I'm typing fast and I'm getting it wrong. You think it's going to work? I'm going to trust you on this because I'm not even checking what I'm typing.
Evoke function.
Thanks. So that worked, right? Very good. You think this is going to work?
Yeah.
Why? Exactly why you should always have semicolons. You should always have semicolons. You should not let the compiler define semicolons for you. You know why? Because what happened in this case is the interpreter actually put a semicolon right here because it thinks of this as a new line. So make it explicit. It's a very good practice. Now, how many of you actually do think that there are two ways of doing comments in JavaScript? You know there are two ways of doing comments in JavaScript? One is this guy, one is this guy, one is this guy, right? This is one, which is very good. And then there's another one, which is this. Now, let me tell you this, and quote me on this. There are no two ways of doing comments in JavaScript. There is only one way of doing comments in JavaScript, period. If there is a takeaway from this talk, that is it. You know why? Let me show you why. So we go here, right? And I come in here and say, okay, great. Whatever, I'm good to go, right? And now some smart guy comes in and is like, oh, we're using a lot of spaces and all that stuff. Let's just move it through something else. Great, no worries. Okay, move it. Sorry. You see what I'm doing? Nothing's gonna work. However, if I had this guy, this comment as this would have worked. But the problem is a lot of bloggers that you find are going to write comments both ways. But when you run through a minifier, you know, you're lucky. I mean, in today's time, the minifiers are good enough, but there are a lot of issues with those. Do you remember? I don't know if you do Angular. You know, whenever you do the controller, the first thing you pass is scope. And then the second thing you pass is HTTP or any of those, you know, variables. And then you actually go to the controller. Now, there's another way to do the same thing, which is not pass any of those and actually go to the controller. However, if you have a minifier, you know what it does? It removes scope and converts it over to something like n or x or a variable that you guys are not using to you know, use less space. And that's exactly the reason why your code even is going to stop working, because of the minifier. You won't see this until you do this, but it does happen, and it happens more often than you think it will. And that's why it's important to control every single thing you're putting. Now, keep in mind, there's only one thing more expensive than a good developer. What is it? A bad developer, exactly. You know, but I run a company. I've got 100 people working for me. I've never in my life lost a single bid against any outsourced company ever. It's a big statement to make. They come and say 20 bucks an hour. We got so many people. We're going to give you 20 people 20 bucks an hour and all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. Our rates are probably 5 times more at least on the minimum side of the story, right? But why do we not lose a bid? Because when they do a bid on a fixed bid and you multiply the amount of people they're putting to do the same exact thing we're trying to do, they'll never do a fixed bid. They'll say it's a time and materials. We'll give you these many bodies for 6 months. And you know what we say? We're going to give you 2 people for 6 weeks. And if you look at the numbers, our numbers are better. And I'm sure most of you guys are the same way. But small practices like these are going to make your code get to the point that you will not have that situation again. A lot of people spend more time doing other things than writing code at work. I mean, how many of you like meetings? You know, I mean, like, look at the meetings we do at work so many times. That's why, you know, you're better off in a company that actually does less meetings. But here's an average statistics. An average developer spends less than 20 hours a week actually writing code. And 20 is on the higher side. You're doing other things. That also means debugging, that also means bug fixing, that means a lot of things, right? But here's one thing I say openly. anyone who's ever worked with me for the last 5 years, have you ever seen a single bug in my code? And I say this openly, I'm getting reported right now. No one can say that. Right? That's where we got to get to, and these are small things that are going to make you get to. Right? But if you have that in front of you, sky's the limit. More questions. This is such a good audience, man. I can't believe like 8:42, you're still excited, yeah.
When you were talking about using var self equals this, or using .find and passing in this, do you have a recommendation either way? I've been fighting that problem myself.
So if you work with a team that has a lot of senior developers, then you're better off doing bind reset. But if you're working with a lot of junior developers, make it explicit because you want them to learn. And that's how I think of it, right? You'll never be successful if you don't make the lowest common denominator in your team successful. The best way is to upgrade him as fast as possible, because there is no lowest common denominator, because keep in mind, every expert was one at one point of time, right? And there is nothing like an expert. You have to keep learning in this whole thing. So whenever you code, I would code in a way that the lowest common denominator looking at it can explicitly understand what I'm doing. So that's how I make a decision. It might not be the best decision. Experts might vary online. They might say there's a better way of doing certain things, but that's the only reason. That's the only way I think before giving a recommendation there. But great question. Anyone else? By the way, I also have business cards. For both of you, I think you were very good, and there were other people that were very good too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 web storms. How about that? So why don't you email me? Oh, no. I should take your name, otherwise everyone's going to email me. I think, I'm around here for talks, and my business cards are on the table. That if you actually, which you probably did, you probably skipped the first slide, even though I said it's the most important slide. They're right here, but they're limited. So before some people die in a stampede fighting for these, go for it. Thank you so much. You're a great crowd.
Everybody stick around for one more second. We have, from Beacon Hill, the sponsor, we have some prizes. I'm going to attempt to play a game that should only take about 30 seconds, and I'll figure it out. All right. Chander, thank you very much. That was excellent. Thank you so much. Okay. We have 3 kinds of prizes here, so we're going to play this game 3 times. Rock, paper, scissors. Everybody's going to stand up. We're going to play me against rock, paper, scissors, and if you lose, you sit down, and we're going to play so many rounds until there's however many people standing that there are prizes. If you don't want to play, just stay sitting. So the first prize, we have 8 of these. They are, they have fancy little cases, and they're like emergency chargers, little USB things. They're pretty nice, pretty cool little gadget. So there's 8 of those. Then there's these are cups, the hard plastic cups with the straws and the screw-on lids. So we got 2 of those. And the grand prize, a pop-up cooler. So we got 3 rounds. The first, we'll do the USB charge, so everybody out. The way we'll play, I'll say 1, 2, 3, shoot. And I'll tell you what I have. Honesty, honor system here. If you lose, sit down. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot. Rock. Scissors, sit down. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot. Scissors, paper, sit down. Do we have more than 8 people standing? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right, let's go. Well, let's see. I got 10. You know what? That's an even number. We'll take 2 cups and 8 USB chargers. One more round for the grand prize. Okay, if you won one of the other ones, you're not eligible for the grand prize. Everybody else stand up. It's the first time I've played this game. If I didn't think it through, we'll try something else next time. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot. Rock again. Paper, sit down. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Did I say the rock?
Scissors, sit down.
Remember what you had last time. If you were scissors, sit down. If you were paper, stand back up. Clearly the first time I've done this. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Paper. Rock, sit down. All right, how many guys we got? 7, 6 guys left. Let's go again. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Rock. Scissors, sit down. 1, 2, 3, paper. No rocks. Okay, let's go again. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Rock. Down. 4. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Scissors. 2 papers. Me against 2. All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3, shoot. Scissors, sit down. Grand prize winner. Okay. Here's a pop-up cooler. Thanks, Cody. Beacon Hill sponsor. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Next month, first Thursday, we'll be at the Volusion office. And we'll have
Where is that?
I'll send you the map. I don't even remember. I think it's a little more north than him.
It's on Meetup.
Yeah, it'll be on the Meetup side. Thank you all for coming. If you can, help me throw your pizza away and stuff. Appreciate it.